Filtered. I am your host, Trege Wilson. I'm with my co-host Matt Smith.
Good evening.
Blain Potvin's here, but he's having technical difficulties, so he's doing the Wes Macaulay. We're gonna blame him if anything goes wrong.
I like what you did there.
Should you like that?
Yeah.
Uh so today I haven't been around for a while. I have other things going on, and I know Matt's working and stuff like that. Blaine soon will be doing a lot of sailing, so we're going to try to get in as many shows as we can. And some days you might just see mine and Matt's pretty face, and or just Matt, or just me, or I don't know how it's going to go. Special guests like Wes Macaulay and Austin Matthews talking about. No, just kidding. We'll never get Austin Matthews. All right, so Matt, how you been?
We're good. Working lots and back at it again tomorrow, writing reviews and doing all the supervisor stuff. So nothing exciting, that's for sure. Yeah.
I'm heading back to Halifax tomorrow.
Awesome.
Working from home for the week, and then back here to Ottawa to finish off my stint, and I'm back in Halifax for May 31st.
That's awesome.
After I get promoted.
Awesome.
So today we're going to talk about the good and bad of the season. What else? You have the list. I don't have it.
Good, bad, in the future from what
good, bad, the
Blain,
future.
what Blain sent me.
Yeah. So we'll start off. So Matt, what I think it was a good season. Now I know I got to address something here. I said before the season started they weren't a bottom five team and they wouldn't finish in the bottom five. Obviously I was wrong because they finished in the bottom five. However, in my defense, if they were healthy, even half healthy than what they were, they never would have finished.
You're right.
Five.
You're right.
As a matter of fact, we'd be bitching about them probably picking maybe 10 to 15.
I agree. We saw how they were at the start of the year, and they were in close against some very good teams.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it was this guy got injured, this guy got injured, this guy got injured, and guys were playing in roles that they weren't used to playing, and it really was the kind of the demise of the year, right? So
right.
But I do agree that there are some positive things to pull out, which we'll get into. But it wasn't a complete loss of a season.
It wasn't. I mean, the positives I look at is Nick Suzuki and Cole Caufield. Cole Caufield, healthy, probably was going to get close to 50 goals. He was on pace for 48 when he went out with his injury.
Yep.
Which means Suzuki probably would have had 70, maybe 80 points.
Right.
On the season. What, 65, I think he finished the season with?
66.
66 he finished the season with. And almost from January on, he played with
Raphael Harvey-Pinard and then whoever else.
And whoever else, whoever they kind of slotted in there with them. So I look at that as I look at a positive, and is Sam Montembeault.
Yeah.
You and I were big anti-Montembeault people. And I think he played into maybe a long-term contract, not 8 years, but maybe a 3-4 year contract after next season, if he plays next season like he did this season anyway. But,
right. We still he's still on for another season at a mill, mm-hmm. So it's a good value contract. But they can't have another season between the pipes getting shelled with the amount of shots that they were shelled with. I think that if they can bring that number down and be that healthier team and play a better team defense, that we're going to see these numbers from the goaltenders go up even that much more. Because even though they were shelled, Montembeault did take that next step in his career and kind of make us, not going to say forget our words, but I still don't think he's the greatest goalie, but he did kind of make me turn my head a few times this season in a positive way.
He's not the AHL goalie we put him out to be. He may be a backup goalie.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. I still don't think he's in contention for, like some people were saying, like a 1A, 1B type thing. No. He's not there yet. But he's a guy that can probably play 30, 35 games and give you an opportunity.
I think if anything, Montreal still needs a starting goaltender if they want to take that next step to contend.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
they don't need it now. They don't need it for another 2-3 years, if you ask me.
Well, it's going to depend on like this is going to kind of be a mixture. I can already tell what the show is going to kind of be like because we're going to go good, we're going to go bad, we're going to go into the future, etc.
and
But
Blain's making noises, so I think he's about to come in here.
um, but
Okay.
I agree. I do agree that they don't need it just yet.
Mm.
However, going into the future, they need to start looking at the pieces that they have, who's staying around, who they're getting rid of, which prospects they're going to push, which prospects they want to take and put into a potential trade, what draft picks, etc. Because you can't just continue having 10 plus draft picks a draft and then say just keep stocking the shelves, just keep stocking the shelves, and then just hope for the best. Like they need some home run prospects, which they've been able to do over the last little bit. However, going into Nick Suzuki, he was my first positive point as well. First year as the captain, 23 years old, going into his bigger contract, etc. There's a lot of expectation, and he performed. Given that the team that he played with, or the guys that he played with, was a carousel after these injuries happened. 66 points and 26 goals. What I don't like about it, he played all 82 games and he put up those 26 goals. Well, the next highest person had 26 goals, and that was Cole Caufield, and he only played 46 games.
Mm.
Right? So scoring is going to be something that they're going to have to look at. They have guys on the roster that with the right people around them can put the puck in the net. However, they've got guys that should be putting the puck in the net, or guys that are playing depth role that should be putting the puck in the net that aren't doing a damn thing.
But here's I'm gonna I agree with you. I do agree with you. But you have to look at Montreal too. Is besides Caulfield and Suzuki till Caulfield got injured, they could never really put a full line together below that.
That's true.
Because of injuries.
Yeah.
Like they could never really put a line like Blain's talked about it a lot. St. Louis likes to have two guys.
Yep.
These two guys are going to play together, and we'll see who fits with them. Right.
Yeah. And they found it in Doc for a while.
They found it in Doc, but they don't want Doc to be a winger. They want Doc. And I think if Monahan stayed healthy, you might have seen Doc as that winger all year long. Like they're not going to break, right? Yeah. But then they kind of had to, you kind of had to move him to the center depth because he didn't have any centers.
Right.
So that worked for Doc because Doc was another positive you can look at in the season. Again, another guy who, if he could have stayed healthy, I mean, I don't think he would have got 60, 70 points, but he definitely probably could have got 20 goals, 50 points on the season. Yeah. And then you look at a guy like Josh Anderson, hit the 20 goal mark here as a Canadian, 21 goals, I think he had. And then injury. Then he gets injured. He's gone and these injuries aren't he's gone for 4 or 5 games. They're all right. He's gone for the season. Like they're done.
Yeah.
So I guess getting in, kind of mixing into the negative was I won't go there. I'll go to the defense. So you started the season with 5 rookie defensemen, and all 5 rookie defensemen played well enough to say, how do we get rid of, like we talked about it, they're going to have to get rid of one or two of these guys. But now you're thinking, let's hope 1 or 2 of these guys can play right-handed, or like on the right side, because you don't want to get rid of any of them.
Yeah.
So I guess that's when you look at the future, and like what you were saying earlier about they got to find out who they're keeping, who they're moving, who they're staying. Is that left side of the defense, they really have to figure out who they're, because Matheson's staying, Gooley's staying, but now you have Jack-Eye, you have Harris, you have Struble, you have Hudson coming up, you have, what's his name they got from Winnipeg there that played all year? Kovacevic. Mind you, he can play on the right side. Harris can play on the right side. Then on the right,
Justin Barron on the right.
But that's all you have: Davis Savard, Justin Barron, and maybe Logan Mailloux if he Although I think Logan Mayhew would be better off in Laval for
I agree.
starting
Me too.
Laval.
Me too. Yeah.
But we'll see how.
Especially with the logjam that they have right now.
Well, there's no logjam on the right side though.
No,
So, but if you put him in on the right side, where do you put the left guys
that's
that were
right.
playing on the right? So,
Yeah.
and I think that's what Hughes and them going to look at. And I think you might see one of those guys. My personal opinion is Harris, but I think you might see one of those guys on the move.
Yeah, I could see that. Or I could even see a guy like Kovacevic, like who kind of came out of nowhere. He was a waiver pickup, so it didn't never cost them anything. And I'll kind of throw this into the future. Um, a lot of people are talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois going to Montreal at the end of the season. Don't know if it's going to happen. Kovacevic isn't a player that Winnipeg wanted to lose. He could be a guy that could be thrown into a deal. They could get him back, and then all of a sudden, you get the player that you want. They get the player that they want back. I'm not saying it's going to be a 1-for-1, obviously. Internet.
That's fair, though. That's fair.
Right?
I would
Right?
take that.
But he was a player that they didn't want to lose, and they were trying to sneak through waivers, and it didn't work out for them. And going into this season, I hadn't really heard a lot about this guy, and he ended up being a pretty solid defenseman for the season.
I personally thought he was the most consistent, not the best, but the most consistent two-way forward that they had. And the reason I say that is you never really heard his name.
Yeah.
And when I see a bottom pairing defenseman and I don't hear his name a whole lot, that's a good thing to me.
And he stayed healthy.
He stayed healthy.
We missed 5 games.
Second most
Hey, it's Blain. He has a voice. Not only did he play healthy, but like I said, he played consistent. His mistakes were minimal. I mean, he wasn't a Gooley, a Harris, or even a Jack-Eye. Like he wasn't wowing anybody. He wasn't, but he played good, solid defense. He was, responsible in the offensive zone. You know, he wasn't costing you goals, but he wasn't really putting goals up for you or helping you score, but he wasn't costing you anything.
Right.
And that's what I liked about Kovacevic. However, in the Dubois thing, I think that is going to happen. I don't think it's maybe. I think it's a deadline. And I think someone like Harris or one of those defensemen are going to not Kovacic. I mean, I see your point about Kovacic. I just don't think he's going to be the guy they're going to want. I think it's going to be someone like Harris or Struble or someone. Hopefully not Jack-Eye, because
I don't think they'll give him up. I just
bought a jersey.
Yeah, after giving up Romanov, and then losing that physical defenseman, and then you bring it, and then Jack-Eye kind of wows us in training camp, and all of a sudden he's on the team, and it's like, well, there's your replacement there.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So you don't want to lose him. I would not trade Jack-Eye right now.
Well, they need a bigger package than just that too. Like they need
yes, of course,
and not to mention a pick and a young player, but they have to give up some salary because Dubois is going to want what 7.5,
probably more than likely.
Depends on what Caufield gets. Dubois is a center. He's gonna if Caufield gets 8, Dubois is going to want at least 8, at least. Whether he gets it or not, it's a different story. But
do you think Caufield? Do you think Caufield's going to make more money than Suzuki?
I don't know if Caufield's going to sign an 8-year contract. I have my doubts.
Right.
And the reason I have my
Suzuki's
doubts,
making just over 7.8, right? So
before I would say no. Before I would say Caufield's going to get around 7.5, around that. But where these contracts are taking so long, I think Caufield's looking at, well, if you're not going to give me 8 to 8.5 for 8, then I want like a deal that's going to take me to free agency. So what would that be? 4 or 5 years? I don't know.
Five.
A few.
A 5-year deal at the 7 or 7.5 million that you want to give me.
Right.
That's where I mean, just my insiders tell me, and my insiders are all in my own head. So my insiders tell me, and they have many R's after their names, so you know they're real. They tell me that's what I perceive the reason negotiations are taking so long.
Well, if he wants 5 to take him to free agency, that would give him 2 giant paydays in his career.
Yeah.
This one, and the one 5 years up the road.
It makes
which is
more
what
sense for
Matthews
him,
did.
really. It makes more sense for him,
It's what Matthews
if I'm
did.
being honest.
So if he really, really wants to be a part of this thing, and he'll go for the 8. But like you said, he's probably going to want more money. Before the season started, I figured he'd get 7.5. He'd get about 9% of the cap. Now, after what he's done over the last 83 games with the Canadiens, and I wrote about this in my last article, he's got 48 goals. So he's essentially a 50-goal player. He's going to want at least 8.5.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, he was on pace this year for 48 if he stayed healthy. He probably could easily bump that up to 50 with the way him and Suzuki were playing together. I'm not saying he would have got it. The on pace was 48, so we'll stick with 48. But he also bumps up Suzuki, because Suzuki, if he plays with Suzuki all year, Suzuki's a 75-point scorer.
Yep.
Maybe 80. Maybe. Right?
I just really like to find a consistent person to play on that side. Right. I know that, like, to have the two of them together, that's fantastic. And we saw the chemistry, and we know that they have the chemistry. But to have a consistent top line would be just fantastic.
If you get Dubois, you can put Doc there.
You put Doc up there 100%. Yeah.
And then Dubois is your second line center, and he's playing with Anderson and
Slafkovsky
or
Yeah.
Druin when they re-sign him.
Right.
He's not coming.
They're re-signing him. $2.5 million.
Sure. But if you do get Dubois, and there's so much smoke, there's an actual forest fire in Manitoba right now from all the talk about it. So it does seem inevitable. So you got Dubois in the middle, Anderson on one side, if he's not part of the deal to get Dubois, and Slafkovsky. So you got a lot of meat there on that second line.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, here's the question: does Slafkovsky play in Montreal, or is he playing Laval?
He starts Montreal.
Yeah.
I think he'll have some good flashes during the preseason, and I think he'll start off on a better footing because he'll know what he needed to work on, and the team will be better, kind of a better sense of where he belongs and where and how he should be utilized, as opposed to this season where it was kind of like, let's just play you everywhere, and this time you play with your head up.
And what I said all season this year before his injury is what I'm going to hope they do next season, and that's start him in the NHL, but move him down if you're not going to play him.
Yeah.
He averaged 12 minutes, and that's only because in the last 8 or 9 games, he was getting 16, 17 minutes.
Right.
Before that, he was getting 8. That's not enough.
No.
The thing is, though, and St. Louis and Hughes touched on that, is they were trying to improve the other parts of his game that he needed to work on. So I think in an interview, St. Louis, or it was either Hughes or St. Louis, he said, we know he can score, we know he can do this, we know he can do that, but he needs to work on A, B, and C. And the problem with that is NHL is not a developing league.
No.
You know what I mean? So if you wanted to work on A, B, and C, then you should have had him in Laval working on A, B, and C. But I guess they just figured St. Louis was the right guy to have to work with him, I guess, is what they were. I don't know. It was a weird situation.
Being in Montreal full time gave him full access to Adam Nicholas as well.
Yeah. So I think you'll see a different Slafkovsky next year. I think, I said this about Kotkaniemi like 6 years ago too, but I think you'll see a different Slafkovsky next year. I'm not saying he's going to blow the doors off the barn or anything, but I think you'll see an improvement. I think you'll see double-digit goals. You'll see the emergence of what we were hoping we drafted.
Yes.
I think if he ends up as a third line winger in this coming season, that's a great step forward. Because that leaves room to grow even more. I mean, big guys like that usually take a little extra time, so we're looking at something about 4 years down the road. So if he ends up as at least a third line winger at this point, then it's showing progression. If he can't
Yeah.
reach that, if he can't hold on to that, then send him to Laval.
And Ken Hughes said we didn't draft the guy for this year. We drafted him for 5 years from now.
That's right.
So we'll see. We'll see wherever Bedard's going to line up too, right? So you gotta like, are they going to want Bedard to be a winger or a center? So it's really gonna,
I think they'll have him on the wing.
yeah. With
Right, so-
he'll be that guy with Suzuki and Caulfield.
That's right.
He's your solution on the right side for defense.
Him or Fantelli, one or the other. One or the other.
Him and Fantilli, because they'll get both.
We'll find a way.
Mitchkov drops to the Florida pick, and they draft him up, and then all of a sudden he gets out of Russia.
That's a good point, though. What if he does? What if Mitchkov does slide to that pick? Do they hold on to that pick just to see if it happens?
Well, it's going to depend on where that pick
Trading it?
is. So we're not going to know where that pick's going to be until,
The end of this week.
well,
Yeah.
they beat Boston. They handily beat Boston yesterday. So
Yeah,
I don't
my
think they
prediction
get
of
by
Boston
Boston.
in 3 is not happening.
Yeah, I don't think they're getting by Boston, but
So if they lose to Boston, that means their pick is 17th.
yeah, right. But if Mitchkov drops to 17th, I say you got to take him.
Yes,
You have to.
but if they want that pick, as in I mean Winnipeg, as part of the Dubois deal, that
You
changes
do
things.
it. You do it
You still pick Mitchkov.
at 17. Not if you're trading it.
Do you wait to see if he drops that far and then pick him up, or do you, because they've got Calgary's first pick as well next year, the year after, 27?
It all
either-
depends
yeah, it's
on if
either
the
next
moon
year or the year
if
after.
if the moon is in line with Mars on the 23rd of any given month, and a cricket in Japan sings a certain song, they'll get it in 2025.
There you go.
That's pretty
So why
much
not
how
give
that
up that pick?
goes. It depends on what
they
Winnipeg's
could.
going to want. Really, like, do they want the 2024 pick, or how deep is the draft in 2025?
Who knows? But it all depends on how much of a barrel Dubois puts them over.
Yep.
If he says flat out, I am not signing with you no matter what, I'll sit out the year, and I'm only going to sign with these guys. You can trade me wherever you want, and I'll sign a 1-year deal with anyone else, but I only want to go to that city. He's kind of calling the shot. That's what Kachuk did. The RFAs are starting to do that now.
Well, I'm
Wait.
hoping that happens with Montreal because I'm hoping that is going to lower the price they got to pay.
But is the price
Yeah,
going to be?
exactly.
First of all, let's stand back and go. Is the price going to be that high?
It's going to start with that first pick.
It's definitely going to be a first pick, but is it going to be plus 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 plus? Because I mean,
No, I think it's 2 to 3 pieces at most.
like if you look at Dubois and you look as though, like, yes, he's going to be a great player. Yes, he's going to be a top 6 player. He's going to help the team, but it's not like he was having 80, 70, 80 point seasons.
Right.
I think what did he finish with this year? 70.
I'd have to look it up.
I'd have to look it up, but this was his best season by far.
Yeah.
It's 63 and 73. 27 goals, 36 assists, which is 3 points more than his previous.
What did he have?
27 goals, 36 assists, 63 points in 73 games.
Okay, see, I thought because he was on pace for higher than that, and he slowed right down near the end.
We
of the
got
season.
injured towards the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's not like he's an elite point producing center here either. Although he is one of those rare power forward centers.
yeah.
But
But do you see what I'm saying though? Like,
bend him over.
you're looking at a guy who's never scored more than 65, never scored more than 63 points. But we're thinking that we're trading for, an Austin Matthews, who, mind you, has only scored 50 goals once. But I don't know. I just find it I don't know if he's going to be as expensive as people think he's going to be.
No, I think at 3 pieces is pretty much all they're going to get. And I don't know how good those 3 pieces are going to be. Like it's going to be a mid first, a B prospect, and some salary. So a roster player.
But what roster player? That's another question.
I don't know.
Who do they have besides Anderson? Who do they have a value that they're willing to part?
Mike Hoffman.
Joel Armia.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Jets want him back.
Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying? Like, yes, I do agree.
Yeah.
They have to give up Joel Edmonston, maybe.
That could be.
I'm trying to look at that roster and I'm trying to think, besides Josh Anderson, who do they have that anyone's going to want?
Yeah, I think Anderson's the most logical choice in that because of the 5.5, because of the age factor.
And he's going to be a wanted. But if you throw Josh Anderson there, that brings the value of the prospect and the pick down. If you ask me,
you may not even get a pick, or you may only get a pick.
Yeah, like I'm saying, like, all right, if you want Anderson, well, then we're not giving you, I'll say, Harris. I'm just throwing a name out there because that's the name I was using earlier. You're not getting Harris, or you're not getting the pick, or that pick's going to be the Calgary 2025 pick and not this year's pick.
Yeah, it does factor in. It does. So, it's a sliding scale.
Let's just say Christian Dvorak, and we'll just call it a day.
That's possible. That is that's another. That way you can say, all right, this pick, this top prospect, and we'll take Dvorak. We'll get our center. You'll lose what, 4.5?
Yeah,
Dvorak is
4.4. Yeah,
4.4 to 4.4. And we'll call it even.
Yeah,
and then Dubois.
As long as money's going out.
Dubois signs for 2.5.
All right. So what's the next topic, boys?
Oh, we're just kind of going back and forth.
We're just kind of everywhere.
I'll throw a negative in.
Trege.
Yeah. I'll throw a negative in, and it's players playing through injuries to the extent that they did this year. And just kind of how it affected them. And for a guy like Monahan, who continued to play through injury, and then it just completely killed his trade value and ended his season.
Well, how do you protect the players from themselves in that kind of case? Like, what would you do?
You don't dress them. You say you're injured, you're not playing. Monahan's case, he was in a walking boot.
Yeah.
So you know,
I know the players are going to want to play, and they're going to want to play through injuries and stuff like that. But at what point, especially given the last 2 seasons and this year, you start off, you're turning heads, you're competitive against teams you shouldn't be competitive against, and then all of a sudden it's just one after another. And they even said with Caufield that he would have continued to play through that shoulder injury if they were in a better position.
Yet that shoulder injury was one hit away from being a disaster.
Right.
So if you knew that 2 months ago, why did you hold off until now?
Right. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a fix. I'm not blaming the medical staff. I'm not blaming their performance or anything. But there needs to be maybe that conversation to be had a little bit more to say, like, hey, you're injured or you're this. So maybe you should look into not playing or sit out this game or whatever else.
But Treg brought up a good point. With Monahan, he was in a walking boot. With Caufield, you couldn't tell.
No.
So you had to rely on his say-so on how he felt. So do you take these guys and put them through an MRI every other month, or like, what do you do?
I think if they complain of something going on, and like, say, what if Caufield said, hey, my shoulder's kind of bothering me? You say, all right, we got a day off tomorrow. Let's get you an MRI and take a look at it. I mean, that's what they do in baseball. In baseball, mind you, most baseball fields have their own MRI machine right in their locker
Yes.
room. But in baseball, as soon as a player has any type of injury, the first thing they do is take him and send him to an MRI. And really, how baseball's not that hard on your body, but not like I mean, compared to hockey, right? Um, so what they should be doing is Caufield says, "Oh yeah, my shoulder's been bothering me the last couple of games. All right, tomorrow's a day off. We're going to take you to downtown, get an MRI done on that shoulder and see what's going on. If we don't see anything, all right, we don't see anything. It's just a tweak. Do some physio and you should be all right."
That would probably be the best way to go.
I mean,
Honestly.
it's not like they don't have the money to do it. It's not like they don't have the insurance. Right?
But I mean, maybe a weekly mandatory checkup.
All right, boys, pull the shorts down and cough.
Cough once, it's for
Yeah.
you. You cough twice,
Yeah.
that's for me.
Oh, we got a hiring here. Trege Wilson has been added to the medical staff.
Make sure you warm up those hands first.
Yeah.
No way, Jose. And Monahan hurt his back just taking his shorts off. All right,
Yeah.
you're out. You're out. But I guess a negative for me on the team. I don't know. I don't really have a negative. I'll be honest. I was pretty happy with this season, with the way it went. Yeah, I don't. We all knew they'd be near the bottom. I still think
You were
healthy.
totally wrong, Treg. You were
I
wrong.
know.
You
I know.
you said 6 to 10 and they're 5.
Actually, I even said I think they'll finish around 7 or 8.
Still wrong.
You know what? Fully healthy is, like I said to Matt earlier, I still would have been wrong because they probably would have been like 10 to 12. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, I'll take the L, I guess. Oh no. You just went back a whole year of tweets to pull that tweet out, but okay.
The dedication. That was amazing.
But no, I mean, I'm happy now they have a chance to get a top 3 pick, get a top 5 pick. No matter who they pick, I think it's going to be a special player, unless they really go off the board. I don't even think Reinbeck's going to be a bad pick if they pick him at 5. So, or is it Reinbeck or Reinbecker or
Reinbacher.
Reinbacher? Some name.
Another guy that we're gonna have to find out how to spell.
Yeah. I don't think even that'll be. I don't think I'd pick him at 5, but I don't think even if they did, I wouldn't look at it as a terrible pick, depending on who they didn't pick, I guess. But yeah.
You take Mitchkov at 5 if he's available? If they stay at 5?
No.
No?
I think Mitchkov's going to drop like a rock. I think he's going to drop like a rock. He may not even leave Russia. So
I can see a team like Columbus jumping all over him.
At 1 or 2?
Columbus, like if say Columbus
right now 3?
They're 3. I could see them jumping on him at 3 or maybe 4 if he's right.
As far as I know, there's reports that he may not even be able to leave Russia at all. Like, I think you're going to see Russian players drop like rocks if they're still in Russia.
Yeah. Hard to say.
Like, especially with the death of his father under mysterious pretenses.
Right.
Yeah.
Days after he said he's hoping his son can get out earlier than out of his contract early. So the rumors say.
He drowned in a pond like 10 feet from his house going out for a walk.
Yeah. I'm not saying anything happened. I wasn't there. But
we just know the outcome.
However,
so for me, I'm going to say my negative is the injury problem. but a positive came from that, in that the Canadiens have been able to see what they have in their prospect pool that is near NHL ready. They played 38 different players on the roster this year, and a lot of them, what was about 17 call-ups.
Yeah, there's too many call-ups.
Yeah. But we were able to see that what Ylonen can do in the NHL. We were able to see that Harvey Pinard is ready for an NHL role.
Yep.
Now, he was on pace for like a 33 goal season, scoring at the pace he was scoring. Don't expect that.
I was going to say there's a negative on one of those, and that was going to be Harvey Pinard, because everyone's going to expect this guy to be a 20 to 30 goal scorer, and I don't think he's going to be at the NHL level.
No, like he scored 14 goals this year. If he plays all 82 games and scores 14 goals next season, that's a win.
Yeah. Because he's going to be a bottom six player.
Yeah, he's not going to be on the top line with Suzuki. He's going to be playing third and fourth line minutes. He might move up here and there, depending on, situations. But yeah, bottom six. But he is definitely an NHL player.
A healthy roster, though. He's probably the only one that returns next season.
I think so.
I think he's the only lock out of all the.
I think Ylonen got a chance if they can get rid of Huffman. Maybe
he's got a chance. He's got a chance, but I think he's the only lock out of the guys that were called up that's going to be back next year.
Well, he's going to be going up against Heineman, who I think he had himself an amazing camp, and he's playing really well in Laval.
Yeah, if you wouldn't have got injured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's two guys that are going to compete for the same spot. Then you have a guy like Gurianov who might sign for a super cheap deal because he can play on the right side.
Right.
I personally like Gurianov, although I don't know that the price would have to be really right.
He started very hot, then he fizzled. He really fizzled out towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his usage was way down.
I think he's a player that needs to play with someone in order to be successful.
Yes.
Yeah, he's more of a complimentary piece. And if he's willing to sign for $1 million for 1 year, then yeah. But he is not getting that qualifying offer.
I mean, not 3.9, no.
No, that's not.
No, he's not going to get the 2.9.
Oh, is it 2.9? Sorry, I thought I was thinking it was 3.9.
Yeah. Either way, may as well be 40. He's not getting it.
Yeah.
He's not getting Joel Armia money, man.
And that's another one of those players, very frustrating to watch, because he is one of those guys that he either plays lights out or he is one of the worst on the ice.
That man has a hat trick. Two of them. He has more hat tricks than Cole Caufield.
He does.
That's a Montreal Canadian.
That kind of hurts a bit.
Wow.
It really does.
Still, next year is his last year anyway, isn't it, Armia?
No, I think he's got a year after that too.
2025, I think.
Ugh. Yeah, he's got two more. He had 2 more seasons at 3.4. Yeah.
Ugh.
I'd be advertising. He has more hat tricks than Cole Caufield, people. Armia to Toronto for Matthews, straight up.
And then do snips of the rosters that he played with, and be like, "Oh my god, what can he do on my team?" But another guy that I think more or less cemented a role on the team is Pizzetta, because he went out there and he played how he had to play to stay in the roster, stay in an NHL roster position. Given the injuries and given really a fourth line role, he still put up 15 points in 63 games. He hit everything. He took on all comers when it came to protecting his teammates. I think he's got a job there next year.
I disagree.
13th forward, sure. I can see that.
I don't think they bring him back at all.
No.
Him and Bazile, I think Bazile signs a AHL contract, and I don't think either one of them come back next year as an NHL.
I think Belzil's probably going to be able to get himself a 1-year NHL deal somewhere, but I don't think it's going to be Montreal.
Yeah. And I don't think Pizzetta is going to be back. The reason being, if you have a healthy Arbor Jack guy and he plays, Pizzetta's really not needed.
Right.
Well, you got to look at the forward group that you have too. How many forwards do you have, and is he going to be in the way, or
And
is he a placeholder?
that's another thing I'm looking at. So unless you get rid of both Huffman and Armia, which I don't see happening, um, I don't see where he plays, especially if you have Heineman and you have Raphael Harvey, RHP, and you got Yololan all knocking at the door to play in the NHL. Pizzetta just takes up a roster spot.
But some of these guys, are they going to be better suited to play in Laval and to play in a more of a top 6 role as opposed to playing a 4th line role in Montreal?
You can't bury Yololan much more before it gets to the point where you either have to find room for him or get rid of him. One or the other. You can't just bury him in Laval. I'm not saying he's NHL now, you know what I mean? But I'm saying he's that guy that
Because he's an RFA.
his confidence is never going to
Right.
get higher if you don't start put him in the
Right.
NHL role.
Right. Because
if he shot more, he'd be a
yes,
stud.
he does need to shoot more. He does need to
Right?
shoot more. But he's
'Cause he
on
has
that.
it.
But he's on that list of RFAs. He's on there with
Yeah.
with him and with Harvey
see,
Harvey Pinard, the two big ones.
I sign him and Harvey Pinard over Pizzetta and Bazile any day.
Right.
And Blain could be right. You could both could be right. He could be that 13th forward or whatever, but who, and then you have, depending on who you draft, he might make it into the NHL. You know what I mean? He might make it in the NHL. So there's another spot. Slafkovsky's going to be there. Dubois comes over. He's going to be there. Where's he going to fit in? That's my other thing. Like, I don't mind Pizzetta. I think you're right. He stood up to a lot of guys. He got his ass kicked by Wayne Simmons there, but he's not a heavyweight, and Wayne Simmons
he's not. He's not.
And so just him locking up with him, props to him. But like I say, you got Jack Eye. You don't need Pizzetta locking horns with anyone. And then where does he fit in on the forward group?
Right.
Like I said, he'd be a 13th forward. If they keep him, it's because he signed cheap and he's a placeholder and he's a 13th forward.
Yeah. And you got to look at, goaltending. Caden Primo. What are they going to do with him next year? He has to go through
because
waivers.
He's going to have to clear waivers. Yeah. Not too sure on that one.
I mean, he could be like Charlie Lindgren when they had him. He had to clear through waivers and no one picked him up.
Could be.
Now, is Primo better than Charlie Lindgren?
Yeah,
Yes.
And Primo's in. Like, he's got a very good contract. He's only making $890 for
That's
2
what I
more
mean.
years. For 2 more years, yeah.
So
And then they got Dobash signed as well, but he'll be waivers exempt, right? So,
well, and go out and get Carter Hart and trade Caden Primo as in the Carter Hart deal, and then goes plays for his dad's old team. I don't know. I mean, I don't think Montreal can afford to get Hart and Dubois in the same year, but unless they really start throwing out picks and prospects. But yeah, who knows? Like, it's gonna be an interesting offseason for sure.
Yeah.
Especially now that DeChow and Dobes have both signed with Montreal or signed their entry level contracts. Primo's kind of expendable now.
He's kind of getting to that point, and I was kind of hoping for a solid kind of play in. Like, he's doing that kind of like play in playoff thing right now, and he was a little bit shaky in that first game. So I don't know. He's one of those players that's very frustrating for me, because he goes out and he's lights out in one game, and then he is kind of he lets in that soft one. But he's one of those guys you want to hold on to because you see the potential there. It's just he hasn't been able to show it consistently at the NHL level, and he's getting like he's not an old goalie to start. Like, the guy's only 23 years old, but he's won the awards, and he's got the respect. It's just he hasn't been able to show that consistency.
Well, it's like, after the playoff series last year for Laval, you'd think he was almost ready to take that next step.
Yes.
But then this year he's kind of sputtered. Like he's been
Yes.
inconsistent in Laval this year. So, and then I thought his 2 games in Montreal, I thought he played very well in the first game.
Right.
But then the second game, he was just okay.
Yeah.
You know, like he didn't. I mean, mind you, he didn't have much help in the second game, but
No.
he was still just okay. Like, you know, but they do got to make a decision. Like they got Montembeault and Allen are there. They're going to be the 2 goalies unless they find a deal and trade Allen or Montembeault, one or the other.
Right.
And then if you're trading Allen, do you really want Primo as your backup right now? You know, especially with his inconsistency issues. I mean, I guess it all depends on where does Montreal want to go. Are they now, okay, we finished bottom 5 2 years in a row. Now let's start inching towards, you know, just outside the playoffs, or are they, let's go for another year at bottom 5?
Well, the GM already said that they're not looking at signing older players just to win a few extra games. So that kind of gives you an idea that they're going to hold on to what they got. And if the team were healthy all year, like you mentioned earlier, they would not have been bottom 5 team. So a healthier team with a couple of minor changes, this is a team that's probably going to be within that 12 to 15 range at the draft the following year.
But they're also a part of a, and I don't know what kind of pressure this is going to put on Hughes and in the team in general, but the Atlantic Division is becoming increasingly more competitive. Detroit's taken that next step. Buffalo has taken that next step. If Ottawa can get their shit together, they'll take the next step, etc. Right? And then you've got the guys that are constantly performing during the regular season. We saw how Boston was this year. And then you look at even in the Metro. So to get in a wild card spot, teams like Pittsburgh and Washington got knocked out. These are teams that are consistently in the playoffs, and all of a sudden they're out, and teams like, you know, the Islanders and the Devils jumped into those positions. So I don't know if that's going to put any pressure on Hughes to kind of say, like, we might have to speed up our plan to be in one of those spots if that's what they're looking for, to be a wild card team or to make a push for the playoffs.
See, I don't think they'll speed up, just for the simple fact Boston and Toronto, although we said this last year about Boston as well, they're hitting that stage where they're gonna have to flip the other way.
Right.
Anytime.
Eventually.
Right. Yeah. Like Toronto, next year is Austin Matthews last year.
Yeah.
If Austin Matthews doesn't come back to Toronto after next year, that whole team's dynamic's going to change.
Right.
Right.
Well, if they lose in the first round again, their management's going to change. So who knows what direction they take?
I think if they don't make it to at least the conference finals, their management's going to change. Like whether they win everyone's so focused on the first round that they're forgetting you got to win 3 other rounds.
Yeah. Well, they haven't gone past that first round in almost 20 years. So
I get that, but
they're a team. And your next matchup's likely against Boston if you win anyway.
You're a Stanley Cup contending team. You haven't been past the first round, so everyone's going to blow their load as soon as they get past the first round, right?
Yeah.
And then go, oh shit, we still got to win the next round.
Right.
So if they don't win that, it's still a complete failure of a season.
Right.
For the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sorry, but
right. Another thing I'll bring up for the Canadiens as a negative, and it's the PK and the power play. I know that the guys were injured a lot, and you weren't be able to really see those players that should have been out there doing so. But even then, they weren't. It was another struggle when it came to both of those stats this season.
Well, if you split the season up in half, the first half of the year, the power play was absolute shit. It was 13%. But the second half of the year, they were clicking along at about 23%, which is respectable. So they figured out a little bit on the power play, how to set themselves up, how to do their thing. The penalty kill was absolute garbage from start to finish.
Yes.
They also had a lot of young players.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It
So-
should improve just
Yeah.
because they've gotten experience.
Right.
You should see an improvement, but also you can kind of give the penalty kill a little bit of a leeway for the simple fact, Edmondson and Savard, and Edmondson wasn't there for the first half of the season, were the only two real veterans that another positive, David Savard. I thought David Savard was a huge positive for the team last year for a third pairing defenseman to play top line minutes the entire year, and play well considering. I thought that was a big positive.
Yep.
Big props to David Savard for doing that.
And I don't know if you guys mentioned it earlier, but Matheson.
Yeah.
No, we never mentioned Matheson. I was
No,
just
we
thinking about
haven't.
him though.
Yeah, we haven't.
Yeah. Like
And,
healthy Mike Matheson would have had 50 points, I think, this year.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It just shows that he's happy where he is now.
Yeah.
He's happy to be in Montreal. And that's something that, to me, this is the biggest positive of the year. Players want to be in Montreal now. For years, they did not want to be. Now they're starting to really look at Montreal as an actual destination. Matheson loved coming home. Savard signed with the Canadiens because he wanted to come home. Dubois wants to come home. Players want to return to Montreal.
So if Austin Matthews changes his name to sound like that, does he want to come home to Montreal?
Well, he's got the shitty mustache, but I don't think he'll fit in.
He carries a purse.
We don't all do that.
I'm just saying it's a cultural thing in Montreal. Like
It is a satchel.
and we're off the air for
Yeah,
folks.
All right, so how about we finish this off here now with some final thoughts? Matt, what about you?
Look forward to the draft. Hopefully they make the pick that they should pick. Obviously hoping for a lottery win. I think it would be just incredible for the franchise if they were able to do that. But if not, they stay at 5-6. There's some very good players there, and it's kind of their time to hit a home run with one of these kind of picks. It can't be a guy that they sit on for X amount of years. Like, this needs to be a guy that's going to be in the lineup in 2 seasons.
Or less.
Or less, yeah.
I think they should stay away from the free agent market this year. Not even touch it. Like, don't even look at it. Maybe sign a couple bottom veteran players just to guide and by I mean bottom veteran players, I mean, this guy's going to cost me 1.5 mil, and he's just going to go in there to help guide the young players. I think they should, like you said, Blain, I think they should stick with what they have, figure out who should be in the NHL and who shouldn't, and go with it. And then you'll find by the end of the season who should stay in the NHL and who shouldn't, and then worry about signing some people to come in to fill holes.
Right. I'll throw one more out there. If the Dubois deal doesn't feel right, don't overpay just to get him. Wait that extra season.
I truly believe that's what Hughes is going to do.
And then utilize that Florida pick to do something, what they kind of like what they did with Kirby Dach, and bring in another young player. And if you can do it possibly for another forward, or even a right-handed shot defenseman, something like that, you make that deal, and then you let the player play out his year. If Montreal was where his destination wants to be at the end, you don't make the deal just to make the deal. You give them another year to develop, give them another year to get better, and then all of a sudden you bring in a piece like Dubois and you're better for it.
Yeah, I like that. Anything else, Treg?
No, that's it. That's like what he said about Dubois. Like, you don't overpay for him. You get him when you get him. If you don't get him, you don't get him. Plain and simple.
Works for me.
Yeah.
So for me, final thoughts. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank everyone for sending in those emails, those messages, interacting with us on social media. We just really appreciate the community that you guys have built around us, and we want to thank you for that, and we want to thank you for listening.